Look at this cup of tea. It looks peaceful, it looks simple, it looks innocent. But this cup, this quiet, innocent-looking cup, destroyed an empire. Welcome to Ancient Stories in English, where we tell stories from history, slowly and clearly, so you can learn English and learn about the world at the same time. Today we follow one man. He was not a soldier, he was not a general, he was a botanist, a man who studied plants. But he carried a secret mission deep into the heart of China, a mission that was illegal, a mission that was dangerous, a mission that, if discovered, meant death. This is the story of Robert Fortune and the most valuable secret in the world. And before we begin, stay with me until the end. I will share a few strange and surprising facts about tea. Small details, but once you hear them, you will never see your morning cup the same way again. Now, let us begin. The year is 1840. You're in London, England. Around you, everywhere you look, people are drinking tea. The factory worker drinks tea before his shift. The soldier drinks tea in the morning. The queen drinks tea in her palace. The farmer's wife drinks tea before the sun rises. Tea is not a luxury in Britain. It is not something only rich people enjoy. Tea is essential, like bread, like water, but more than that. Britain does not just like tea, Britain relies on it, like a dependency, something you cannot stop, even if you want to. And where does this tea come from? China. All of it. Every single cup. At this time in history, China is the only country in the world that knows how to grow tea, how to process tea, how to produce tea at scale. No other country knows the secret. This is called a monopoly, when one person or one country controls everything about a product. The price, the supply, the knowledge. China had a complete monopoly on tea. They controlled everything. And Britain has a problem. To buy tea from China, Britain must pay with silver. Not cloth, not machines, only silver. China is a great civilization. They do not need anything from Britain. They have everything they need inside their own borders. So every year, silver flows out of Britain and does not come back. This is called a trade deficit, when a country spends more money buying things from other countries than it earns selling its own things. Britain's trade deficit with China is enormous and growing. By the 1840s, Britain is desperate. Desperate means you need something so badly that you are willing to do things you would not normally do. Britain tries to sell opium, a dangerous drug, to China to recover some of the silver. It creates a terrible war. It creates suffering for millions of people. But even this does not solve the problem of the tea monopoly. And so, one day, in a quiet office in London, a decision is made. Britain will not send soldiers. They will not send warships. They will not fight another war. They will send a botanist. His name is Robert Fortune. Robert Fortune is a Scottish botanist, a man who studies plants. He already knows China a little. After the Opium War, China was forced to open a small number of ports to foreign traders. Fortune visited these ports and brought back many beautiful plants to Europe: peonies, wisteria, chrysanthemums. But those ports were like small windows. You could see a little of China through them, but you could not go inside. The real tea, the best tea, grows in the mountains of the interior, far from any port, far from any foreign eye, and by the law of the Qing dynasty, any foreigner who enters the interior of China without permission is executed. Executed. Put to death. This is the mission the East India Company gives to Robert Fortune. Go into the Forbidden Mountains. Find the best tea plants. Learn the secrets of tea production. And bring everything back to India, so Britain can grow its own tea and break China's monopoly forever. Fortune accepts. But first, he needs a disguise. A disguise means changing your appearance so that people do not know who you really are. Fortune shaves the front part of his head, the way Chinese men of the Qing dynasty wear their hair. He grows the back part long and braids it into a queue, the long braid that hangs down the back. He puts on traditional Chinese robes. He takes a new name. He looks, at least from a distance, like a Chinese merchant. But he has one problem he cannot fix: his accent. Fortune does not speak Mandarin. He can say a few words, a few phrases, but not enough to fool anyone for long, and if someone speaks to him, the disguise breaks. His solution is clever. He tells people he is a merchant from a distant province. A province far enough away that his strange accent, his strange words, his strange manner, all become normal. Of course he sounds different. He is from far away. He also travels by sedan chair, a small covered seat carried by two men on poles. Wealthy travelers use sedan chairs. And wealthy travelers in sedan chairs are not usually stopped and questioned. In 1848, Robert Fortune leaves the port city of Fuzhou and begins his journey inland. He is heading for the Wuyi Mountains, deep in Fujian province. This is the heart of black tea production in China. Almost no foreigner has ever seen this place. The journey takes many days, first by boat along the rivers, then on foot through the mountain paths. The landscape is beautiful and dangerous. Fortune faces three threats on this journey. First, river pirates, armed men who attack boats on the rivers of Fujian. A foreign man carrying valuable materials and money is exactly the kind of target they hunt for. Second, local officials, government men who can stop travelers, demand papers, ask questions. One wrong answer, one moment of confusion, and Fortune's cover breaks. And third, perhaps the most dangerous of all, his own guides. The men Fortune hired to lead him into the mountains. They know he is a foreigner. They chose to help him, but could he trust them completely? What if, one night, the money from a local official seemed more valuable than the money from Fortune? What if one of them, for any reason, decided to speak? If one person decided to speak, just one, his story would end there in the mountains. Fortune writes in his diary that he did not sleep well for many nights during this journey. This feeling, this constant fear that at any moment someone will discover your secret, is called paranoia. He had to navigate the mountains. Navigate means to find your way through a difficult or complicated place. But he also had to navigate the fear, the suspicion, the silence of a country that did not want him there. After many days of travel, Fortune finally arrives. He is standing in the middle of China's most secret tea gardens. And no one knows who he really is. Fortune moves through the tea gardens. He watches the workers. He watches how they pick the leaves. He watches how they carry the leaves back to the workshops. He watches, very carefully, everything. And slowly, over days of observation, he begins to notice something. Something that does not make sense at first. At this time in Europe, scientists and tea traders believe a very clear fact. Green tea and black tea come from two completely different plants. Two different species. This is not a guess. This is accepted scientific knowledge. It is written in books. It is taught in universities. But Fortune is looking at the same tea bushes, and he is seeing green tea leaves being processed in one workshop, and black tea leaves being processed in another workshop. He watches more carefully. He asks questions through a trusted translator. And then the answer arrives. Same plant, different process. That is the secret. Green tea and black tea come from the exact same plant, Camellia sinensis. The difference is not in the leaf. The difference is in what you do to the leaf after you pick it. Green tea. The leaves are heated quickly after picking, steamed or pan-fired to stop any change from happening. The leaf stays green. The taste stays fresh. Black tea. The leaves are left to rest and oxidize, to slowly react with the air, to ferment. Ferment means to change slowly through a chemical process, like grapes turning into wine or flour and water turning into bread. During fermentation, the leaves turn dark brown. The taste becomes deeper, stronger, more complex. This is a revelation. A revelation is a discovery that completely changes what you thought you knew. One moment, you believe one thing. The next moment, everything is different. For 1,000 years, China kept this secret, not always deliberately, but effectively. And in a few days of careful observation, Robert Fortune understood it. But understanding a secret and stealing it are two different things. Now Fortune must move the plants out of the mountains, and he must do it without anyone knowing. He does not carry glass boxes into the Wuyi Mountains. That would be the end of his disguise immediately. Instead, he works like a real smuggler, slowly, carefully, using what is already around him. Up in the mountains, Fortune and his trusted helpers collect what they need. Young plant cuttings, seeds, small seedlings pulled carefully from the soil. These are not placed into anything special. They are hidden in ordinary bamboo baskets, packed together with common farm goods. A merchant carrying baskets of plants and vegetables does not attract attention. That is exactly the point. Then begins the second part of the operation. The plants travel down from the mountains the same way everything travels in southern China, by river. Small wooden boats carry the baskets quietly along the inland waterways, moving south and east toward the coast. The journey takes weeks. Along the way, Fortune's network pays off the right people and avoids the wrong ones. The destination is Shanghai, one of the treaty ports, where British merchants are legally allowed to operate. And waiting in the warehouses near the Shanghai docks, already prepared by the East India Company, are the Wardian cases. A Wardian case is a sealed glass box, a miniature greenhouse. Inside, the plants create their own small environment. The moisture from the soil condenses on the glass and falls back down. The plants can survive for months without any attention, completely sealed away from the salt air and the wind of the open ocean. When the plants arrive from the mountains, Fortune transfers them himself, carefully placing the cuttings and seedlings into the dark soil inside each case, adding just enough water, then sealing the glass lids shut. To smuggle something means to move it secretly across a border, against the law. Fortune has built an entire pipeline to do exactly that, from the forbidden mountains of Fujian, down the rivers of southern China, through the treaty port of Shanghai, and now onto the decks of British ships heading for India. The Wardian cases are loaded onto the ships. They sit on the open deck, in the sunlight. The plants inside growing quietly, protected from everything outside by the glass walls around them. The ships leave Shanghai. They sail south, then west, across the Indian Ocean. Destination, Calcutta. But Robert Fortune is a careful man, and he understands something that many people miss. The plants alone are not enough. A tea plant is just a plant. If you do not know how to harvest it at the right time, how to heat it at the right temperature, how to roll the leaves in exactly the right way, the tea you produce will be poor, weak, wrong. The real knowledge, the real secret, lives not in the plant. It lives in the hands and the minds of the people who have worked with tea for their entire lives. The tea masters. Tea masters are craftsmen, men whose families have made tea for generations. They know things that are not written in any book. They know the exact sound of leaves in a wok that tells you the temperature is correct. They know the exact pressure of their palms when rolling leaves that produces the right shape. This knowledge is called a blueprint, the complete, detailed understanding of how to produce something. Fortune made arrangements. We are not entirely sure how, for several tea masters to leave China and travel with him to India. They brought their tools. They brought their knowledge. They brought 1,000 years of tradition in their hands. We do not know if they came willingly. History did not ask them. What Fortune took from China is called, in the language of today, intellectual property. Intellectual property is the knowledge, skills, and ideas that belong to a person or a group. You cannot see it, you cannot touch it, but it has enormous value. Today, stealing intellectual property is a serious crime. Companies and countries fight over it in courts and in politics. In 1851, Fortune called it botany. Robert Fortune left China with 20,000 plant specimens, several tea masters, their tools, and the knowledge of 1,000 years. He had stolen not just seeds, he had stolen a civilization's most valuable secret. The plants and the tea masters arrived in Darjeeling, a region in northeastern India, high in the foothills of the Himalayas. The altitude, the temperature, the rainfall. It is similar enough to Fujian that tea can grow here. It was not easy. The first years were difficult. Many plants died. The tea masters had to teach Indian workers methods that had no words in any Indian language. The soil was different. The seasons were different. Everything required adjustment. But slowly, patiently, it worked. Britain began to cultivate tea in India. To cultivate means to grow something carefully and intentionally, to give it what it needs, year after year, until it flourishes. By the 1880s, just 30 years after Fortune's mission, India produces more tea than China. The British drink Indian tea without knowing it, without caring. The cup is the same, the taste is close enough, the price is lower. And China's monopoly, the monopoly that had held the entire world in its hand for centuries, is gone. In Fujian province, in the mountains where Fortune walked, the workshops go quiet. Not all at once, not in a single year, but over 1 decade, then 2 decades, the orders from Britain slow down, then stop. European merchants find Indian tea cheaper and easier to buy. The great merchant ships no longer call at the tea ports of Fujian in the same numbers. Workshops that once never slept went quiet. Families who had made tea for 10 generations, who knew no other work, no other life, found that the world had moved without asking their permission. China did not disappear from the tea world. China still produces tea today. Beautiful tea, still drunk across Asia and around the world. But the monopoly was gone. The power was gone. The silver that once flowed to China from every direction, gone. The collapse of China's tea economy did not happen overnight, but it happened. Think about that cup of tea again. The one from the beginning. Maybe it came from Darjeeling, maybe from Assam, maybe from Sri Lanka. Almost certainly, it came from a plant that was stolen, from a mountain that Fortune walked through in disguise. From a secret that China kept for 1,000 years and lost in 1 decade. And the tea masters who traveled to India, the men who carried that knowledge in their hands, we do not know their names. We do not know if they were glad they went, or if they regretted it every day of their lives. History is often like this. The most important people in a story are sometimes the ones who are never named. History is everywhere, even in your cup. In today's story, we learned about a monopoly, when one country controlled all of the world's tea. That monopoly was broken by smuggling, moving plants secretly across a border. And it was broken even more deeply by the theft of intellectual property, the knowledge and skills that belonged to China's tea craftsmen. One monopoly, broken by smuggling and by the theft of knowledge. Britain stole China's tea. And then, 50 years later, the Americans decided they were tired of British tea altogether. They had a different solution. But that is a story for another time. And as promised at the beginning of this story, here are 3 small but surprising facts about tea. First, here is one more story. Every modern British armored tank has a tea maker inside. It is called a boiling vessel, a small electric heater built into the vehicle. During World War II, some soldiers were killed when they stepped outside their tanks to boil water for tea, so the army changed the design. They made sure soldiers could make tea safely, without leaving the tank, because even in war, tea was never optional. Second, a quick fact. The tea bag was not a careful invention, it was an accident. In 1908, a merchant in New York used small silk bags to send tea samples and save money. His customers did not understand and placed the whole bag into hot water. That mistake became a habit. Today, tea bags are often filled with the smallest and cheapest parts of the leaf. The dust left after processing. Sometimes, a simple mistake can create a global industry. And third, one last thing before you go. Tea is drunk all over the world, but most of it comes from a very small group of places. Around 80% of the world's tea is produced in just 5 countries: China, India, Kenya, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. This region is sometimes called the Tea Belt, a narrow zone with the right climate, altitude, and soil for tea to grow. It may feel like tea is everywhere, but in reality, it comes from just a few corners of the earth. Thank you for listening to Ancient Stories in English. If this story was interesting to you, if you learned something, if you felt something, please share it with a friend who is also learning English. Stories are better when we share them. See you next time. and enjoy your next cup of tea.